Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here from Zoobox, another movie review. And today we're going to be continuing on what we started a few days ago. Last week I talked about, if you haven't checked them out, Escape from New York and Escape from LA. Uh, One of them I really like a lot. The other one I like a little less. John Carpenter movies, the Escape movies. And then yesterday we talked about Ghosts of Mars. We talked about this movie because Ghosts of Mars was originally supposed to be the third Escape movie. And why? What are we talking about today? And why are we talking about it? So there's the 2012 film Lockout, which is directed by, James Mather, Steve St. Ledger, written by James Mather, Steve St. Ledger, and Luc Besson, who is also a producer on this movie. And if you don't know who Luc Besson is, The Fifth Element, The Professional, most recently Valerian, and A City of a Thousand, something like that. I call it Valerian. I can't remember. The City of a Thousand Faces. Is that what it is? I don't hate Valerian. Actually, I own Valerian, but I can't remember what it's called. It stars Guy Pearce, Maggie Grace, and Peter Stormare, and among others. It's actually got a pretty good cast. Lenny James, if you're a Walking Dead fan, Vincent Regan, Joseph Gilgun, who is excellent in this movie, and whole list of other people. But so the cast is actually pretty good, pretty interesting, and Luc Besson's name being on it is makes it kind of noteworthy. Makes it interesting. He sometimes can swing and a miss with these things, especially as a producer. I'm more interested in Luc Besson as a director. Not that I love everything he's ever done, but whatever. But the reason why this came on my radar is because John Carpenter sued Luc Besson or the production company or whatever, because he claims it is a ripoff of the Escape movies, both Escape from New York and Escape from LA, and he won his suit. The court found that there was enough substantial story elements taken from the Escape movies, and so they awarded him an award, a prize. It just sounds so fucking John Carpenter to do that, but see what the IMDb synopsis is. A man wrongly convicted of conspiracy to commit espionage against the U.S. is offered his freedom if he can rescue the president's daughter from an outer space prison taken over by violent inmates. That's kind of it. And as far as it goes in terms of feeling like it's ripping off the Escape movies, I think you could definitely say there's an element of homage there. Everything from some of the particulars and like Guy Pearce's performance. He's doing kind of one of these characters, except probably more of a comedic version with a lot of one-liners. I wish the writing was a little bit better, I'll be honest with you. So I can see where, if I had seen this, I'd be like, oh, this feels a lot like an Escape movie. Feels like maybe an ode to those movies. And I think that's kind of what it was. But I don't know, and I don't know what the legalities are of having to kind of cite something like that if you're just kind of riffing off of it, because it's not, the particulars of the movie are not at all like any of these Escape movies, even including Ghosts of Mars. It's not like any of them. Just the superficial stuff is. So, but I guess that was enough. It was enough to have the courts award John Carpenter his money, and he's always looking for that paycheck. He always looking for, where's my check? Where's my check, fuck? I make Halloween movies, where's my check? That's the kind of guy he is. Working class, working man's director, And so let's just talk about the movie itself. Like I said, it's got a pretty good cast, which keeps it more interesting than I think it would have been without it. I mean, just having somebody like Peter Stormare there makes everything, makes it very watchable. But the bad guys, actually, Vincent Regan and Joseph Gilgun. Joseph Gilgun, if you had watched AMC's version of Preacher, he played Cassidy. And I didn't actually watch that show past the first season. I thought it was okay. But he's really good. He's a great actor. And they are great. I wish they had better material because the script itself was just kind of dumb. It's not, and I think part of that is intentional, but then they think that they're being clever at times as well, like clever in the scripting, like the writing comes off as like they think this is kind of a clever twist, and you're like, no, No. And the structure of this movie is kind of weird. I think it overstays its welcome. At some point it stops being interesting, and they kind of keep things from characters, and you don't really understand why. Because if they didn't keep those things from the characters, it would actually escalate the tension and the danger. And it's weird. It's got this weird thing. Like once it gets towards the kind of the third act, suddenly it just piles on character development. So like the last 30 minutes of the movie, suddenly these people, they want you to care about them, and here's some character arcs. Because up until that point, it's not. So they're all pretty one note, pretty one dimensional. There's not a lot going on in terms because it is what it is. It's just kind of it embraces the fact that it's kind of a silly, dumb action movie. You can definitely tell this was not shot for a PG-13, was edited for a PG-13. I mean, there are things that just happen in the movie that seem like they would have been like kind of moments that they would have necessitated rated R. Like he gets this explosive cord, and you click the cord together and it makes like a circle and it'll blow something up. Well, he gets it as like a tool that he goes in with, and he uses it within like a minute. So he gets the tool, and then 5 minutes later he uses it. There's foreshadowing for you. But he wraps it around this goon's head, and they cut away. There's no blood. There's nothing. They just cut away from it, from the explosion. And there's a bunch of stuff like that when people getting shot or stabbed or because this is the kind of movie that should be just crazy over the top, and it should be bloody and guts and viscera, and it should be like that. And it doesn't do it, and it definitely makes it less interesting because just the sterility of it, you know. I wish it had just gone full bore. I know there's an unrated version of this movie. I don't know if that makes a difference. I watched the cut that was on Netflix. It's on Netflix right now. And like I said, I kind of didn't really have a ton of interest in watching it. I like Guy Pearce. I've liked Guy Pearce since I was a kid. I mean, LA Confidential, that was probably the first time I saw him. But I used to love that movie. I was like obsessed with that movie. And so I've always had a thing for Guy Pearce, but I don't know. This just never really appealed to me. Like I always thought, like I was like, oh, it's probably fine. And maybe that's why it never felt like the need to really watch it. I think it starts really great. It's got a very good, like strong first act. The first 45 minutes work really well, and then it just kind of, it's almost like it doesn't know what to do with itself. It kind of meanders, and then it layers all these complex, unnecessarily complex plot elements. And because there's this whole like espionage angle that's like in the background of the main story, but they don't really develop it. They've developed it a little bit in the beginning, and then it comes back at the end. It's almost like works as a bookend, and it's not very satisfying or interesting because you don't really know what the fuck is going on. You just like it's like this unnecessary twist. It's like that's what I mean about like saying that the writers clearly thought they were being a little bit more, maybe more clever than they actually are. Maybe that's harsh. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little unfair to Besson and crew. But yeah, I wish it was better. Maggie Grace is Maggie Grace. If you don't know who Maggie Grace is, she's this perpetual. She looks like a teenager still. Maggie Grace was the daughter in Face Off, and she was like, I think she was like in her late 20s when she did that, and she played the teenage daughter. So I don't know how old she is now, but when she did this in 2012, she still looks super young. She's like this perpetual teenager look. It's really crazy, but she's not a very good actress. And poor Guy Pearce, he has to try so hard. He's doing something very specific. He has made a choice. He has made a choice to be the wisecracking hero or anti-hero kind of guy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's almost like they lay it on a little too thick, and then at the end of the movie, it kind of just disappears. Like that affect disappears until like the last 30 or 2 minutes. So it's very odd. I feel like there might have been more to the movie that got cut out, and they just like cut it down to make a tight kind of action thriller. Just like I'm sure that's what motivated the PG-13. Maybe it didn't track well, and they're like, wow, fuck, we got to get this in as many theaters as possible. I'd be curious if the rated R or the unrated one actually makes the movie a better experience. It very well could. Like I said, if it was just dumber and more over the top, more gory, I might have liked it more just on that. But as of right now, I'd probably give it like a 2.5 out of 5, a 5 out of 10. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily. If you're like a big fan of just these kind of garbage movies, some people are, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of like a big budget sci-fi channel type thing. It looks good though. I'll say that. After I watched it right after I watched Ghosts of Mars, because I was like, we gotta finish the Escape movies, guys. And it was like as soon as the movie started, I was like, holy shit, it looks like a movie. Thank God. And they do some interesting stuff. The sets are really, really cool, actually. I just wish there was more of just like a clear motivation for the villains. I wish there was more, like, it doesn't feel like there's much at stake for anybody involved. It kind of just, a lot of it falls flat. It just feels very flat. And by the end, you're just like, oh. And it goes for the most cliched possible, like, ending ever. And not in a good way. And I know that's the movie they were making, and it makes sense in that respect, but even then, it's like, you guys, you can do a good version of that, I guess, but they had just committed to mediocre action movie at that point, and they're like, well, we're going to go out that way too. So we started, goddammit, so we're going to end it. But, I had high hopes the first 25 minutes or so. I was like, wow, this is clipping right along. I'm enjoying myself. It's dumb, but entertaining. And then it just kind of fizzles out pretty soon after that. Pretty soon as you know what's going on, and it just stops being interesting. It's a bummer. Everybody. Can't give it the old recommend unless you're into this stuff. I guess there's always something for everybody. It's hard to say like, well, I give it the recommend, I don't give it the recommend. Well, I think if you like these kinds of movies, you'll find it watchable. It's a passively entertaining movie. It's not going to be a classic. It's no Escape from New York, okay? You're not going to be remembering that. You're not going to be telling your children about Lockout. Like, oh, you got to come over, guys. With the grandkids, have them come over to have a nice viewing of Lockout, Or maybe you will. Maybe you're a fucking weirdo. Maybe you're just that kind of person. You're sick. You're sick, person. You're gross. Yeah, but I don't really got much else to say about it. It was just unremarkable. I wish it was better. Just like I do every time I watch something that is almost there. Like it comes very close to the sun, It comes very close to achieving its goals, like executing on its goals, and because that's how you should judge movies. And I judge every movie. Try to suss out, what do I think the movie's trying to get across, and does it get it across? And I don't think this movie is ultimately successful. It's like one of those things where at the end you're like, I know what you were getting at. Like, I understand what you were trying to do, but I don't think you connected those dots well enough for me to really say I enjoyed it. Just because I'm a few steps ahead of you is not it's not credit to me. Like, oh, I'm so smart. It's like, no, you're failing, and I just can see what you're doing. Just see what you're doing. This will be the one review. These guys, James Mather and Steve St. Ledger, they'll come after me. They're going to see this, and they're going to be like, he was talking so much shit. That's my French accent, by the way. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to follow Zoobox, you'd like to know more about the operation, bunch of links in the description for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, yada, 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 everything else. Also links to the podcast feeds. These do not go up on the podcast feed, by the way. There's a weekly movie show called Zoobox Goes to the Movies, and there's a regular show called just Zoobox. Those go up on the weekly feed. So you get 2 podcast episodes. The difference between these videos and, say, Zoobox Goes to the Movies is usually I try to, my best, get somebody to come and sit with me and talk and have, a long-form discussion. Most recently, I had a great conversation with Big Paul, friend of the show, Big Paul. We talked about everything, The Shining and the conspiracy theories and all that stuff. It was a really fun time, really great episode. Before that, did another deep dive analysis review on Glenn Ross with another old buddy. Great times, and we got a great movie coming up this weekend too. We're going to be recording it this weekend, throwing it up. Old Danimal, Dan from Zoobox Prime, coming back onto Zoobox Goes to the Movies. We're going to be talking about There Will Be Blood. I'm super excited about it. We're super pumped to talk about it and kind of just go through the whole movie with all our notes and stuff. All right, everybody. Goodbye.